survived for 3 years and it was banned by the government in 1969. And the leadership of the party were arrested and taken to political detention. From that time onwards, Kenya remained a de facto single-party dictatorship from 1969 to 1982. 1982, when some of us wanted to form a political party, the regime then went to parliament and introduced a law to make the country a single party state de jure by introducing a constitutional amendment which is known as Section 2A that made it illegal to form any other political party. So from 1982, it remained literally a single party dictatorship. That is the reason why in that same year there was a coup attempt which did not succeed. But before that, a number of Kenyans were arrested and taken to political detention. Most of them were lecturers at the University of Nairobi. Mukarunganga, people like Professor Katama Mukangi, Professor Willy Mutunga, Dr. Professor Yugi Akongo, quite a number of university lecturers were arrested and detained, and the others, Koigo Amwere, George Anyona, were taken to political detention. So this situation persisted. Some of us were arrested in that year, 1982, after the coup attempt, and taken to political detention. And we stayed there for 6 years. Then in 1988, Kanu brought an amendment to his laws, saying that they were bringing what they called direct democracy, where there was a nomination process where people were lining up behind the candidates, and then the returning officer would count the voters who had lined up behind the candidates, and whoever got the highest number of votes, if you got more than 50% in total, you are automatically declared a member of parliament without having to go to the ballot. That process was abused, and many popular candidates were rigged at that stage, and therefore there was no real proper election in 1988. This now added momentum and anger to the movement for change. Among those people who had been rigged out were Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia. So, come 1990, by that time I had been to detention 2 times. The 2 politicians, Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia, on the 2nd of May 1990, addressed a press conference, which they said that Kenya, the time had come for Kenya to become a multi-party. That Kenyans wanted a multi-party system of government. They were condemned seriously as being ethnic chauvinists, anarchists, people who want to bring chaos in this country. We told that this country was not yet cohesive enough to become multi-party. It will take another 100 years before Kenya became a multi-party system. These were daydreamers. So the kind of machinery at that time set off now to demonize the two members of parliament, the two former members of parliament. And in the process, of course, a number of very inflammatory statements were made, even by some today politicians who are talking about democracy here. You go into the archives, you see the names and what they said at that time. So in the process, Kenneth Matiba came to look for me to arrange for a meeting between him and Ramogi Ogai Raila Odinga, who is my father. I arranged the meeting, and then we met again. They met again with Sarubia, Toneko, and after lengthy deliberations, the decision was taken that they would be supported. At that same time, they sent the goons to Matiba's home the following day to attack his family. Matiba's wife was very badly wounded, Edith, and she was admitted to Nairobi Hospital, where we went to see her. After that, we, myself and Kenneth Matiba and Charles Rubia made a statement in which we said we would go to Kamukunji to ask Kenyans if they were ready for multi-party. And we do it on the day of the 7th of July, that year, 1990. 7th of July, 1990. So after making that statement, we then now went on to mobilize for the meeting at Kamukunji. But then, of course, the police officers came to block us from meeting each other. They were stationed in my office at Ajip House, Matiba's office, up there on Koinange Street, and Rubia's office, and Paul Mwite's, and Gibson Kamal Korea's. On the 2nd of July, 1990, Matiba and Rubia were arrested and taken to detention. On the 4th of July, I was arrested and taken to detention. That same night, they arrested Gitobu Manyara. They arrested John Hamenwa. They arrested now Justice Mohammed Ibrahim. Paul Mwite went into hiding. Kamal Korea ran into American embassy and sought refuge. Keyoto Murungi was in Ethiopia and went to America. But that's how it was. But the International Commission of Jurists came up and made a very powerful lobby for the release of Hamenwa and Manyara, and they were released. As we remained in detention. And as you know, Rubia is the one who was first affected. He got a very serious infection. He was taken to hospital. Eventually, he nearly lost his vocal cords and was released. Matiba suffered a stroke in detention and was removed and eventually brought to Nairobi Hospital, after which she was then taken to London for treatment. That completely undermined his health permanently. And these two people eventually died because of not old age at that time, but because of the injuries they sustained while in detention. Many people, but in spite of our being detained, the Kenyan people braved it and came out in numbers to go to Kamukunji on the 7th of July, 1990. Many people were killed at attempting to reach Kamukunji grounds that time. So then, after we came out of detention, then Ford was formed. We formed Ford. And after forming Ford, again we get pressed and said we were going back to Kamukunji. Eventually, when I was targeted again, I was moved away from here and taken into exile. But our people braved it and managed to march all the way into Kamukunji. And you'll see the photograph in front page of Nation there today. You can see Martin Shikuku, James Orengo, Nyang Nyongo, Masinde Muliro on the back of that truck guiding me up to Kamukunji. That was not on Saba Saba, that was on the 16th of November 1991. But it's still the Kamukunji. That's why Kamukunji is very historical for the second liberation of this country. And that's why we celebrate Saba Saba. The fateful day on which Kenya's struggle for multi-party democracy took the most decisive turn is iconic and historical. It's a day rivaled only by the present day Masuja Day, previously Kenyatta Day, that celebrates the arrest and detention of the freedom fighters jointly called the Kapenguria Six. It is regrettable that the recognition and remembrance of Saba Saba has not been consistent in its short period history of 35 years. One moment it is important. The next moment it is not. On this 35th anniversary of Saba Saba, we decided to remember and to set the record straight on its significance, what it was and is, and what we ought to do with the foundation it laid for the country. Before that day, some patriotic Kenyans had demanded the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution. A number of people, including Kenneth Matiba, Raila Odinga, Mohamed Ibrahim, Toby Manyara, John Haminwa, and Charles Rubia, among others, were arrested and detained. It is quite unfortunate that some of the people we were fighting then and who sanctioned those arrests are trying to hide behind Saba Saba to advance their political fortunes. Some of them are alive today and now are masquerading as liberators. On the fateful day, July 7th, 1990, thousands of Kenyans tried to gather at the historic Kamukunji grounds to take stock of the past, the state of the nation, and chart a path of freedom forward. We decided that Saba Saba would be a march for political freedom and liberty, freedom of association, freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and a new democratic constitution founded on multipartism. Kenyans wanted a fulfillment of the Kenyan dream, which was eradication of poverty, ignorance, disease, and good governance. That clarity of mission is what made Saba Saba different from all other confrontations with the Moi Kanu one-party state. Saba Saba, therefore, was and still is about the sacred and historic grounds of Kamukunji. It was not and is not just another routine street protest in Nairobi or any other town. At Kamukunji is where they held the last KAU, Kenya Africa Union meeting in 1952. It is where KANU's first rally was also held. It was also where the first Ford meeting was held after registration.